Right now, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Saudi Arabia meeting with Arab officials as he pushes for Hamas to accept what he calls an extraordinarily generous truce offer. Pressure for a ceasefire has been building ahead of a threatened Israeli assault on Rafah, where more than 1 million Palestinian civilians have been sheltering. And Israeli officials tell NBC News there is great concern that the International Criminal Court could issue arrest warrants against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other top Israeli officials for war crimes, and that they could come as soon as this week. I want to bring in retired Admiral James Stavridis, former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO and MSNBC Chief International Analyst. Always good to see you. I want to start with those potential ICC arrest warrants for Netanyahu, for other senior Israeli officials. What would that even mean in a practical sense?
Personally, I would certainly not want to be indicted, even if my nation, and by the way, the United States, like Israel, is not a full participant in the International Criminal Court. The problem is, whenever you travel anywhere, you're liable for an Interpol arrest that can be issued into nations that are part of the ICC, ICJ, etc. So, very uncomfortable position for the prime minister to potentially find himself in. Having said all that, I think that he will have a reasonable line of defense in terms of self-defense. I don't see him ending up in a courtroom, but certainly an uncomfortable position for any head of state.
And as you know, Admiral, the White House believes there is a window right now to secure a ceasefire that could head off Israel's assault on Rafah. Talk about what you see in terms of the timing of these negotiations, obviously the pressure, and is this really now in Hamas's court?
Well, as we say in the Middle East, ojalá, let's hope this happens deeply. And by the way, kudos to Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Tony Blinken, a good friend. I mean, watching the travels of Tony over the last few months, a couple of days ago, he's in Beijing going toe-to-toe with President Xi. Now you see him in the footage you're showing trying to get this deal to land. I give him a lot of credit for getting out, getting into it, and doing all that he can and all the administration can. I think there's a window here, and he is absolutely right to go to the bankrollers, the money that is providing Hamas and the money that could potentially rebuild Gaza. That's where the pressure point is that could be applied. I think there's a 50-50 chance we'll get to some kind of temporary ceasefire, hostage release in the next few weeks. Ojalá.
Obviously, so much is at stake. And while Tony Blinken and his team are working pretty tirelessly, as you point out, on this, we continue to hear criticisms from hostage families that Netanyahu is prioritizing his own political survival over the lives of those hostages. I want to play for you, Admiral, what the niece of one of the hostages said just yesterday.
One of the things that really worries my family and worries me is that it's arguably not in Prime Minister Netanyahu's political interest to close a deal. We're at 205 days. There have been deals on the table, and they've proven elusive. And I worry that that is because of Prime Minister Netanyahu. So I think that now is the moment. I have faith that we can do a deal now, but I also think that if that isn't possible, then the Biden administration should think about what they can do directly to bring our American citizens home.
Do you agree with that? And what options could there be that would essentially go around Israel?
First and foremost, I agree with the heartbreak of being a family member who is subject to having a hostage held by a brutal terrorist organization like Hamas, which has shown its proclivity to attack civilians, to kill, maim, and rape civilians again and again and again. In terms of the deal on the table, I think we're at a point where the U.S. is going to put pressure on Israel to close a deal. And Secretary Blinken is right to get the Arabs on the Hamas side to put pressure on Hamas. Failing that, Chris, your question, I think there are few cards left to play in terms of pressuring Israel to take a hostage deal if Hamas simply refuses what I consider a very reasonable deal that's on offer at the moment. The Biden administration, I think, will just continue its current play, which is a smart one, put pressure both on the Hamas side through the Gulf Arabs, We do the pressure work on Israel. Let's hope we can get a deal.